Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel. I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing fabulous, thank you very much. And I do hope that you've had a lovely, lovely day. Loads of love to each and every one of you. Before we get started, don't forget to get that quintessential glass of drink, whether it's an icy cold glass of wine or red wine or Irish coffee or Coca-Cola. Whatever it is that you drink, I love hearing from you. So don't forget to get that drink. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, my name is Carlson, and I'm originally from Lenox Hill in the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York City, where I grew up with my parents in a prestigious townhouse along Madison Avenue, which is a maze of rather flashy-looking, intimidating designer shops, apartment buildings and townhouses, which can make you feel that unless you're carrying a Gucci handbag and wearing the latest designer fashion, you could feel awkward and out of place wandering into some of those shops, with the sales girls eyeing you with beady eyes, ready to pounce on you if you look like you're worth a bob or two. And if you look like you don't have any money at all, they'll almost glare at you with condescending looks of disapproval, as if to say, "What are you doing in our shop?" And for that reason, I've always hated the pretentiousness of these places. My parents run one of these rather glamorous, eclectic designer shops on Madison Avenue, with a snooty sales staff in their employ, who have that superior attitude that I can't stand. We sell a vast selection of grandiose, opulent, zooty merchandise to affluent customers from all over the world, and all the stuff is imported from London, Milan and New York. And as a result, my parents gave me a managerial position in their company, which involved travelling abroad to negotiate with many of our suppliers in regards to the product ranges we wished to purchase, and ensuring that we procured the best financial deals for the business to enhance our profit margins. At that time of my life, I was about 28 years old, with a university degree behind me, but really I had no idea what it was I wanted to do with my life. I had been working for my parents' designer business as a stopgap for myself, and although lucrative and very productive, I had about as much passion for the business as a honeybee has over a sugarless drink. Of course, this did not go down very well with both my parents, who were piling on the pressure for me to become fully involved in their business. But that was it. It was their business and not mine. "It's going places, son," my father had insisted. "The business is booming and is a household name now. It's a guarantee for success." I tried to explain to my father that this was his little nest that he had built for his family. And while his nest was indeed great, I wanted to build my own. You never hear of a wild bird raising its family in the very same nest that it was raised as a fledgling. That would be ridiculous, and the twigs and leaves in that nest would be so degraded and atrophied. Instead, the young male bird builds a brand new nest for its family, with healthy twigs and leaves, for a brand new auspicious beginning. I wanted to do exactly the same for my life. "You want to build your own nest, son, do you?" my father had said scathingly, with a distinct note of disapproval in his voice. "Do you know how many small businesses fail and fold every year? You have the opportunity to make it big on the back of my wings, and you want to throw this all away for a random shot in the dark or a dive in the deep end. You are impudent, mad, and frivolous, son." "I don't know, Dad," I said, "but your business does not interest or inspire me. Why would I want to do something for the rest of my life that I don't enjoy? I tell you what, I'll work for your business until I feel shepherded by the universe down another path for my life, and that is my final decision." "Fair enough, son," said my father, "but let me warn you, you could be waiting forever. Life does not work in quite the romantic, illustrious way you believe it does. If you're expecting a path to open up for you miraculously, you're dreaming. That never ever happens." Little did my father realize how wrong he was, and how my life was about to change and blossom in radical, dramatic ways that even I could never have envisaged possible for my life. It all began when I took a business trip to London on behalf of our family business, where I met up with one of our suppliers, a lovely young lady called Tammy Chesterfield, who was the manager of her father's affluent London business. During the week she lived in an upmarket flat in Mayfair, but her real home was an exquisite red-brick farmhouse in the Berkshire countryside, surrounded by acres of green pasture and plenty of Peruvian horses. During our meeting, Tammy persuaded me to stay at her family farmhouse for the weekend, where she lived with her husband James and 2 children during the weekends. It was a peculiar arrangement that is not uncommon in England, as many choose to avoid the incessant chaos of the daily commute. It would seem that James ran the farmhouse during the week, where he managed their farm and tethered their 2 children, while Tammy remained in London, commuting home to Berkshire for the weekends to spend with her family. Bear in mind, I had pretty much lived in New York most of my life and had little experience of country life. Growing up, I had become tarnished with a superiority belief system and had been led to falsely conclude that people who lived in the American countryside were unsophisticated simpletons with completely different values to ours, and that we had about as much in common with each other as a butterfly has to a caterpillar. I was to find out how wrong and misinformed I really was. I must confess that the idyllic, memorable and magical weekend that I spent in the English countryside with Tammy and her lovely family literally ripped the blinders off my eyes, rather like a band-aid over an open wound. It enabled me to see a slower, easy-going pace of life that both intrigued and stirred me up. I found it far more appealing and attractive than the fast, bustling heartbeat of a very busy, high-octane city driven on its relentless surge of adrenaline, and a city that never really sleeps, nor does she calm down for a single moment. "I love the countryside," said Tammy. "I never did enjoy the big city. Everything in London is way too far-paced for me. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe in the city, as it can become almost claustrophobic for me. Yet when I spend a weekend here in the countryside with my family, I feel re-energized again and uplifted. There's something so grounding about nature. It's like it helps you to come to your senses and find your bearings, if you know what I mean." "I wish Tammy would leave her job in London," piped James. "We all miss her terribly, especially when she leaves for London every week." "If you feel this way, Tammy, why don't you live in the countryside?" I asked her. "Permanently. You could start up your own business out here." "Oh, I couldn't do that," she said, looking at me aghast. "What on earth would I do out here? At least with Daddy's business, I have long-term financial security for myself. If I start up my own business, I could fail, and I couldn't handle that." "What's wrong with failure?" I asked her. "It's like falling off your horse and getting back on again. You can only learn from your mistakes, as no one successful ever got to the winning post without making lots of mistakes along the way. You'll learn to ride without falling off sooner or later, and then you'll begin to wonder what all the fuss was all about." "You make it sound so easy, just like Ella," laughed Tammy. "Let me tell you, that woman has more sense in her than anyone I know. She tells me to pack up working for my father and to stop riding on the back of his success and to do something constructive and worthwhile out here in the country. She assures me that my fear of failure is my biggest stumbling block. If I followed my passions, I would find my way and be successful and much more fulfilled." "Who is Ella?" I asked curiously. "It sounds like she's talking common sense. I think I like her already." "Oh, she's a Romany gypsy that I visit for guidance. She lives in a caravan on the side of the woods. You should go and visit her. She could give you a reading and help guide you on your life path. She does give good advice and wisdom. She's worth a visit." "How does she do that?" I asked. I really could do with some guidance myself, but I can't say I'm sure that a Romany gypsy has the answers I'm looking for. "She reads energy and palms," said Tammy. "She claims it's a God-given gift. Let me take you to her. At the very least, it could be an interesting experience for you." "I'm not sure that I believe in something so outlandish as palm reading," I said, "but I suppose I'll give it a go. Why not? I haven't got much to lose." Before long, Tammy and I were walking down a pretty country lane, surrounded by verdant green countryside and ubiquitous statuesque trees. We took a swift turning to the right, and that was when I saw this very rusty, shabby, tumble-down-looking caravan parked on a high grassy embankment, fringed by some tall oak trees. There was a large canvas sign pinned above the canopy that read Romany Gypsy, Palm and Energy Readings by Ella. "I'm not sure about this, Tammy," I said, looking at the ramshackled grotty caravan in horror and feeling a growing sense of discomfort overcome me. I was clearly prejudiced by its grotty appearance and didn't think anything good could come out of it. I rubbed my moustache reflectively and said, "If this woman has such sound advice as you say, why is she living in a clapped-out caravan that looks like it's falling apart at the seams? Surely if she was so successful and gave accurate readings, like some of the psychics you see in America, that she would be living in the lap of luxury, not in such a seedy, decrepit-looking caravan like this." "You really don't get it, do you?" laughed Tammy. "You've got this ludicrous, absurd notion that everybody wants to live like a king, surrounded by abundant wealth. It might actually surprise you to know that not everybody is like you. Ella's wealth is obtained from her God-given gift, and she acquires her abundance and joy from reading people's palms and steering them down the right path on their life journey, only charging them a couple of pounds in the process. One of her clients even offered to buy her a top-of-the-range caravan, but she refused the generous offer. Ella is very proud of her Romany Gypsy heritage and her roots, and sees her life as a calling, not as an opportunity to get rich. It has never been about money for her, never." How Tammy persuaded me to go into that dilapidated caravan for a reading, I do not know, but before long I was seated very uncomfortably on a threadbare chair, waiting for Ella to read me my palm, feeling very much on edge. What the heck was I doing here, I thought to myself. I must need my head examining, going for a palm reading of all things. I glanced awkwardly around the caravan with a curious, intrigued interest, and I could see that despite its great age, the caravan was kept meticulously clean, almost as if its proud owner treated it with love, care and respect, and I felt secretly ashamed of myself for being so judgmental. Ella was not a youngster as I'd envisaged, but in her early 50s, and she wore a crocheted shawl over her long dark hair that was highlighted by pretty strands of grey. She regarded me quizzically, as though staring at a painting that she was trying to study. "You have a very reluctant energy," she said to me, eyeing me intensely with her dark brown eyes. "I sense you would rather be anywhere else but here. Are you really sure you want a reading? I won't take any offence if you should wish to leave." "I came here for a reading," I said reluctantly, handing her my tight, clammy palm. She took my hand from me, wiping the perspiration off my palm with a tissue and placing her fingers over my lifelines. "You are very cynical about palm reading, are you not? I'm still feeling that very negative, oppressive dark cloud from you, of doubt and disbelief. Do you not believe that the lines on your hand might very well be a roadmap for your life and your intended purpose?" "Not really," I said. "None of that stuff makes any sense to me at all." "So you don't believe in energy points, meridians and chakras?" she asked me. "Certainly not," I said. "All that stuff is New Age nonsense." Ella examined my palm very closely, as though she was reading a book. "You are very lost and confused," she said to me. "You are desperately trying to find yourself, but you are like a blind man stumbling around in the darkness looking for the light. Am I right? It's like you're looking for your direction in life, and you simply can't find it." "In a manner of speaking," I said, "but I would like to know what to do with my life. I don't feel I've found my purpose. I will say this from your reading. You will never be happy in a big city. You are being drawn to the countryside, and God will make a way for you. And I see a woman involved, and 2 children in the picture. That's the path you need to follow. You need to work the land and feel the sun beat upon your brow. That is the only thing that will make you truly happy. It's your life's calling to work with the soil, and to watch the green buds of new life, and to bring in the rich harvests of your labour under the sun." She paused for a moment and was silent, almost as if there was something insidious that she didn't want to share with me. One of your biggest soul lessons in this incarnation is for you to listen to your intuition, because if you fail to do so, your life will be cut short. You can see on your hand a fork in the road, she said, pointing to 2 paths that meandered off my lifeline. It seems that you're afraid to listen to that inner voice, but not doing so will lead to your untimely death. Are you kidding? I'd said. Number 1, I would never be a farmer in a million years. And number 2, I'm quite sure I already listened to my intuition. I have to admit that extraordinary palm reading transpired over 10 years ago, and had almost been lost and forgotten in the recesses of my mind, gaining dust and cobwebs, and being remembered no more. That was until at 38 years old, I suddenly realised that I was indeed working the land and running my own farm. I mean, how did that even happen? It was exactly as Ella had described my life calling to be. It was hard to make any sense of her accuracy. I had fallen in love with a country girl called Patsy, and had moved into a cottage on her family's West Virginian farm. I had been instructed and coached by my wife's father on how to sow the seed, and just as Ella had predicted, I was never happier than when I worked the land with my disc plough and the sun beat upon my brow. Long gone were the days when I'd worked for my father's business, and I assure you, not for a second had I ever regretted leaving all that behind, as my life was so much richer, rewarding, and more edifying now. Naturally, my parents were not too pleased, and rather piqued and disgruntled with my decision to abandon my job in New York. But in truth, it was the best decision I had ever made, as I had never felt more appeased, contented, and satisfied with my life. Before long, my wife's parents took a back seat on the farm, and we reversed roles. They moved into the cottage, while my wife and I moved into their large farmhouse. I was doing the lion's share of the work on the land, and running things very efficiently and smoothly, with a feeling of incredible fulfilment and satisfaction. I had also learnt that my friend Tammy in England had listened to Ella and taken the bull by the horns, and was now running a very successful business in the Berkshire countryside, which was a delicatessen selling organic farm produce, from homemade butters to cheeses, honeys, milks, jams, organic meats, and everything like that, and she assured me that this was the best decision she had ever made, and she didn't miss the hustle and bustle of London at all. I was delighted that in the end she had also followed her passions. I feel so good, she told me, because I made it on my own without my father's help, and I knew exactly what she meant by that. The next part of my story begins when one day I decided to ride my horse Amelia Rose down some of those horse-riding trails in the countryside that were surrounded by elevated hilly embankments that were densely packed with bushy, resplendent trees, from oaks to hickories and pines, and there were clumps of moon daisies growing through the turf. All of a sudden this young girl came bolting out of the Frosty Meadows woods onto the riding trail, looking completely terrified. She kept looking back over her shoulders as if she was expecting something to follow her, giving me the sense that she was being pursued or chased by something or someone. The horror-struck look on her face melted away like butter when she saw me, and I discerned she was heartily relieved and comforted by my approach on horseback. She stood in the middle of the riding trail, oscillating her arms frantically, as if she was in serious trouble. I galloped over to her on my horse to see if she was all right. I suddenly recognised her as Farmer Beckett's older daughter, Scarlett. Without wasting any time, Scarlett literally climbed on the back of my saddle, holding tightly onto my back for dear life, and begging me to speed up. And so Amelia Rose cantered out of the area as quickly as possible, until finally my horse was standing outside Scarlett's family farm gate, and she eagerly dismounted. I could discern by the discomposed expression on Scarlett's face that she was very anxious, perturbed, and unsettled. "Are you sure you're going to be all right?" I asked her. "I don't feel good leaving you like this. You look as if you've had really rather quite a shock." "I'll be fine," she assured me. "Thanks so much for the lift. I truly appreciate it." "What happened back there that made you so scared? Or don't you want to tell me about it?" I asked. "I'm not sure you'll believe me if I tell you," she said, "but I'll tell you anyway. I saw a Bigfoot back there, in the woods, and this thing was so enormous I nearly had a heart attack on the spot. Nothing could prepare me for how intimidating the creature was. I mean, I've seen documentaries about them before, But the size of this thing, it boggled my mind. I was so terrified. "You saw a Bigfoot," I gasped. "Are those creatures even real?" I didn't think so before now, but having seen one larger than life, I have to conclude that they are indeed real, because I assure you my imagination was not playing tricks on me. I know exactly what I saw, and it was a male Bigfoot. "I believe you," I said. "What happened exactly?" "Well, I was going mushroom hunting in the woods. I was collecting some mushrooms, most particularly lion manes, to make a chicken and mushroom pie for dinner tonight, as we're celebrating my mother's birthday this evening. Anyway, as I was searching for the mushrooms, I got this airy, creepy feeling that something was watching me. And that was when I saw the Bigfoot. It wasn't even trying to hide from me. It wanted to be seen, which was exceedingly odd, given these creatures are naturally elusive by reputation. Well, that's what I've learnt. I promise you this thing made me feel like an ant. It was so colossal. Nothing has ever made me feel so vulnerable and small and inconspicuous in all my life. It was like facing a lion or any other remarkable predator." "Was the Bigfoot aggressive towards you?" I asked curiously. "I mean, did it growl or scream at you? What did it do to make you so petrified?" "I think the thing that scared me the most was the Bigfoot itself. The general appearance of the thing. It was so daunting. It wasn't even aggressive towards me, but it was acting very weird." "What was it doing?" I asked. "It kept pointing to the right-hand side of my head, as if to say there was something there, like a bug or something. But when I put my hand on my head, nothing was there. Over and over again, it kept pointing to the side of my head, and in my mind, I'm almost sure I heard the words, 'Very bad, very bad.'" "Do you think he was communicating with you telepathically?" I asked. "I have no idea," said Scarlett, "and quite frankly, I don't care. If I never see that monstrous thing ever again, it'll be far too soon. It scared the living daylights out of me, which is why I ran away as fast as I could. But I don't think it followed me." A week after I had rescued Scarlett on the back of my horse, my wife informed me that tragically Scarlett was found dead on her parents' farm, and it appeared from the coroner's report that she had died of a brain aneurysm that had occurred on the right-hand side of her head. I was devastated to hear the appalling news, and could not imagine the grief her family was going through. I did wonder if it was a coincidence that a Bigfoot whom had made his presence known to Scarlett while she was mushroom hunting in the woods, and had acted strangely by constantly pointing to the right-hand side of her head, whether by any chance he had tried to warn her about her brain aneurysm. I had heard of dogs that could detect cancer in human beings. Was it possible that the Bigfoot had discerned her brain aneurysm and was trying to warn her of her problem? In my opinion, this was more than likely. After doing some research on the subject of Bigfoot, my curiosity got the better of me, and I was intrigued and determined to search for the creature. So 4 weeks after Scarlett's tragic demise, I retraced her footsteps and ambled into the frosty meadow woods, hoping to encounter a Bigfoot. My wife had given me a basket for picking some wild mushrooms, as I had not revealed to her my real motives for visiting the woods. I carried a high-caliber rifle under my arms for self-defence, and was beginning to feel rather foolish, because I could see that this search was indeed futile. Who was I kidding? Did I really think I would randomly encounter a Bigfoot just by chance? How many people in North America had scoured the forest aimlessly in pursuit of this illusory creature with little success? Yet I had the presumptuous audacity to believe that a brief encounter in the woods with this ambiguous creature would be fruitful. Was I completely off my trolley? It was a beautiful summer's day, and the woods were alive with exquisite birdsong, and the tall, statuesque trees with their masterful trunks towered up into the heavens like vertical towers, and the rocky ground covered in voluptuous boulders and pretty lacy ferns looked so arresting, and was only enhanced by the natural soft light from the canopy that dappled the floor in an ethereal luminescence. I noted everything was covered in resplendent layers of velvety moss, and before long I began to gather some mushrooms, as I knew my wife loved lion manes, and there were dozens of them growing all over the woods. I dutifully obliged my wife by piling my basket with all these fabulous edibles, and was about to leave when I suddenly sensed that everything had become alarmingly quiet, and even the bird song had receded and dissipated. It was like the woods were alive with the sound of silence. I had the distinct impression that I was being watched and scrutinized by a pair of unseen eyes. I knew that this meant the Bigfoot could be around, but I wasn't prepared for the nervous anxiety that completely overcame me. I needed to get out of the Frosty Meadows woods right now if I had any common sense at all. I began to walk speedily through the wood green, glancing over my shoulders nervously to check if I was being followed. I was so terrified. I realized that the last thing I wanted was to see a Bigfoot after all. Let's face it, a man is entitled to change his mind about such things. All of a sudden my eyes were drawn to some shrubbery that was twitching and ominously moving backwards like a curtain being drawn, and stepping through this dense foliage, I beheld a creature so massive and intimidating that in my astonishment I dropped my basket of mushrooms on the ground. The creature just stood there staring at me for a moment, and it was as if time stood still, for every single second lasted an entire lifetime. All I could feel was the thunderous beats of my heart pounding violently in my chest, and an icy chill travelled down my spine like a cold Arctic wind. "Run! Run! Run!" were the words that screamed through my mind, inviting me to obediently rise to the urgent call. But it would seem that my physical body refused to cooperate or respond to my brain's frantic commands. "Run! Run! Run!" My mind screamed again, but I was unable to move. The Bigfoot stepped out of the shadows, meandering towards me on a pair of very powerful legs, and stopping only a couple of yards from where I was standing. And he was so close that I could hear his heavy breathing. He sounded exactly like a horse. The critter's pyramid-shaped head and shoulders swiveled towards me, and he looked directly at me with deep-set, dark eyes that seemed kind and congenial, not aggressive or threatening as I had anticipated. If you were to ask me to describe the creature to you, I would say that the gargantuan size of the Bigfoot was not something I was prepared for, as it was easily 8 foot tall and between 600 to 700 pounds. Its whole body was covered in long flowing dark hair that was much less dense under the armpits and around the knee area, and the body was so powerful and strong, with a barrel-shaped chest and massive shoulders upon which the head was attached, without any discernible neck to speak of, but the face on the creature was remarkably and alarmingly human. The creature moved towards me, and I could smell the scent of wet moss, and it touched my chest with its hands, and in that moment my fear accelerated like the engine of a car, but I simply could not run. The creature kept pointing towards my chest again and again and again, and made a chattering sound. It then just turned around and glided away, and was gone from my sight. For a second I stood there like a lemon, feeling so perturbed and confused. What was that all about? And why did the creature keep pointing to my chest? It was all too similar to the time when Scarlett had encountered a Bigfoot who had pointed to the right-hand side of her head, and a week later she had died of a brain aneurysm. Something in my gut told me to pay attention. You may wonder why some people sit on their Bigfoot secrets for many long years, sometimes never telling a solitary soul about their encounter, and now I truly understand why. I assure you, it takes a great deal of time to come to terms with such an outlandish interaction, and sometimes you find yourself replaying what happened in your mind over and over again, and wondering, did I really see that? Sometimes you can even doubt yourself, and your memory can become almost dreamlike. For a long time I told no one about what had happened to me, but as the Bigfoot made such a big deal about my chest area, I instinctively sensed that I needed to get my chest checked out. I thought back to the palm reader who had told me to listen to my instincts or my life could be shortened, and that rang warning bells in my head. When I told my doctor that I wanted him to give me a CT scan of my chest, he thought I was crazy. "You don't smoke, nor do you have any problems with your lungs," he had said to me. "Why do you need the scan?" I persuaded him to humour me, and he was astounded to find a small cancerous mass on my lungs, of an aggressive cancer that could easily have killed me within the next year. But due to the early diagnosis, I am now cancer-free. And it's all thanks to a palm reader in England who told me to listen to my instincts or my life would be cut short, and to a Bigfoot who alerted me to my problem. If there's any moral to this story, I'd like to suggest that you always listen to your gut instincts and that you don't piggyback your way to success on somebody else's wings. Well, not if you want to find out what you alone are capable of. So there you are. That's my story. What a fabulous story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.